Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and Autism Acceptance Month is over. But I really want to encourage you to think about autism outside of April. So as we go into May, here's the full compilation of all of my Autism Acceptance Month 2025 videos. Enjoy! TikTok diagnosed me with autism, and it was right. It is now April, which means it is now Autism Acceptance Month, Autism Awareness Month, whichever you prefer. And I happen to be autistic. My name is Babbles, and here is my diagnosis story. Editing Babbles here. Just wanted to pop in a quick disclaimer. There's a saying in the autistic community where if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Everything I say in this video is purely from my own knowledge and experience. There will be autistic people who agree with what I say. There will be autistic people who disagree with what I say. So just keep that in mind. Enjoy. Okay, so before I get into the background of how TikTok diagnosed me, I want to give a little bit of a background into myself. So, when I was a kid, my parents had a nickname for me. They called me their everything girl, their more of everything girl. It seemed like whatever emotions I was feeling, whatever I was going through, I would just be a bit more intense with it. And they didn't really think a whole lot of it. I mean, being more of everything means there's more joy, there's more laughter, there's more happiness. However, it does also mean there's more anger, there are more outbursts, there's more sadness. But, I was a pretty happy kid. Most, if not all, my needs were met. And I'm actually going to bring this out one more. And that's just how life went. I just kind of went with the flow of things. Now, I will say I was an extremely introverted kid. I often say I didn't make any friends. My friends made me because it was just so hard for me to talk to people, to get used to people. I just couldn't do it for whatever reason. It even got to the point where it was uncomfortable to talk with my own cousins, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to call my sister by the nickname that everyone else called her. I couldn't make myself do it. But, that's not uncommon for a shy child. So I grew up and got more advanced in school, and I started having regular meltdowns. I thought they were just anxiety attacks, but then learned more later and found out they were meltdowns. So I started going to counseling, and that was helping. And then I went to college, and it got much worse. That was a very dark time in my life, and that is a little bit personal, but I really want you to have the full story. So I had to drop out of college because of that reason, and I ended up staying home with my parents for quite a while. In fact, I still live with my parents because a few years ago, shortly after the pandemic started, I was scrolling on TikTok and saw a couple of videos about what autism can look like in people my age, in women, and how it can be a little bit different. I learned about masking and thought, hey, that seems pretty familiar. So, quick break. What is masking? Masking is basically presenting a different image of yourself, basically hiding everything you do. So think about it a little bit like this. You're going to behave differently around your parents than you would around your teachers or your boss, or even around your friends. That's not to say you're lying, you just behave a little bit differently. That's what I was doing, but all the time, with everyone, including myself. So, I'd been doing that my entire life. And what happened around high school is my body decided it didn't want to do that anymore. So it started having meltdowns. It was its way of letting me know, hey, the thing that we're doing right now, this isn't good. We need to stop. So it ended with a lot of drained energy and just general unhappiness. Oops. So, flash forward to the pandemic, and I come across some TikToks talking about masking and talking about something called special interests, which I will get into later, maybe in a different video. But all of it, like I said, was feeling extremely familiar to me. And I thought, hey, I think maybe I should take a closer look at this. So I talked to my parents about it because obviously they've known me for my entire life. They know more about what I was like as a kid than I do because I was a kid. I don't remember. So I talked with them and they said, hey, this does seem pretty familiar. Maybe we should do more research. So I took a couple of online assessments, which I want to be very clear about online assessments. They're useful tools. They are not really meant to be used as actual diagnostic materials. It's just kind of a way to take a look at yourself and think, hey, is this all in my head or does this warrant taking a closer look at? For me, I scored pretty high. So my parents were like, all right, let's go get you an appointment. So I got an appointment and I got diagnosed. I have level 1 autism, and honestly, even just knowing that I have autism really helped a lot. So, what am I doing here? It looks like I'm building just a row of normal houses, right? In fact, I'm going to fill in a little bit here because that's kind of bothering me. What I'm doing is I'm building facades. For the next month, so for all of April, all of Autism Acceptance Month, I'm going to be building what I think is a representation of how my particular autism looks and feels to me. Now, I want to make another thing clear. I am not any sort of medical professional. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm just someone who is autistic. So this will be purely about my experience because that's all the information that I have. But I still think experience is a really good way to explain something, or it does make me qualified, I think. So this is a facade, and this is representing my masking. These are kind of variations of the basic Minecraft house. So things that are very usual, very typical. And that's kind of what I was doing for my whole life. I was presenting myself as neurotypical. Now, what does neurotypical mean? Neurotypical basically means someone who does not have any sort of... Ooh, this is going to be hard to explain. Someone who doesn't have a neurological difference. So people with autism, people with ADHD, people with OCD, anything like that, we are not neurotypical. We are what is known as neurodivergent. And there's also another term that I think you should know, and that is allistic. That is specifically someone who is not autistic. So I am neither neurotypical or allistic. I am neurodivergent, autistic. So basically, with the mask, I'd been presenting myself as a neurotypical, as an allistic. And so this is just going to be representative of that. So my plan for this is to each video focus on a different aspect of my particular brand of autism. And maybe if you have any questions, I can talk about those. So this episode is specifically about my diagnostic process and my masking. So, hence, facade. This one's looking pretty big. I think I'm going to stop there. And yeah, do the roof line like this. Now, something that I do think is very funny is Minecraft kind of has a reputation for being the quote-unquote autism game. There are a lot of autistic people who like Minecraft. And I get it. As an autistic person who loves Minecraft, I totally get it. It's very repetitive. It allows you to be creative. It's just nice. I don't think I like this. I think I'll go one more up, just in the middle. Oh goodness, I have gotten myself confused. Oh well, I'll figure this out. So, if you have any questions at all about autism, about my diagnostic process, because that took months and was very difficult and required input from both myself and my mother, please feel free to leave a comment, feel free to ask. I do enjoy talking about it. I think... Okay, here's something that kind of makes me a little bit different from the rest of the autism community at large. April is typically known as Autism Acceptance Month nowadays amongst autistic people. I think we need to focus a little bit more on awareness, because it used to be known as Autism Awareness Month, and I do think autism acceptance is great, it's amazing, but as someone who was diagnosed late in life, but also not even the latest I know, I think we still have work to do on the awareness front. I had no idea I had autism because I didn't know autism could look like me. I was used to, the typical version that we see in TV shows and movies with people like Sheldon Cooper or even Rain Man, which, by the way, Rain Man I do think is a fantastic film. It is a little bit outdated, but, we have to have outdated versions before we can have the fully accurate ones. But anyway, I had no idea that I could have autism because I never saw anyone like me with autism in TV shows and movies. So I think we've still got a lot of work to do on letting people know what it can be like. Okay, I think I'm going to do one more and then I'll wrap up. Okay, so I've got a final smaller one here, and then I'm just going to fill out a little bit here so you can't super easily see what's going on over here. Because that was kind of what I was doing. I was masking so much, you couldn't really tell what was going on behind the scenes, what was going on in reality. So we're just going to make it a little bit tougher to see. Now, I want to make one more thing clear about my diagnosis story. I was incredibly lucky. I say it took months. That's on the shorter end for a lot of diagnosis stories. For some people, it can even take years. For me, I think it was maybe about 4 months. And I got diagnosed at 21. that is considered late, but I've also heard stories of people not getting diagnosed until they were in their 40s or 50s. There really isn't a whole lot of awareness happening, but it is slowly spreading, and that gives me a lot of hope. Now, a lot of you may have heard there's a lot of fear-mongering going on about how cases of autism are increasing. And that is both correct and incorrect. Yes, there are more people nowadays who are legally considered autistic, but there are way more people who are autistic who haven't gotten a legal diagnosis. And that's why I say, even though I have an official diagnosis, I have nothing against the so-called TikTok-diagnosed autistic people, the self-diagnosed autistic people. Because for a lot of late-diagnosed autistic people, we started off self-diagnosed. That real, quote-unquote, real diagnosis wouldn't have come if we hadn't first thought, hey, I think I might be autistic. So, the thing about the cases rising, there's probably about as many autistic people now as there have been for basically ever. We've just gotten much better at identifying them. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with being autistic. You hear me? Nothing. Does it make my life difficult? Yeah. But are there also upsides? Of course there are. It's just like any other thing. There are positives and negatives, just like with being a regular human. So, this has been the first episode of my Autism Awareness Month series. We've got my masking facade here. And I think it works pretty well. It's your standard Minecraft house, but there's gonna be some stuff behind it. So, if you have any questions or anything about autism you would like me to address in future videos, please leave a comment. Like I said, I absolutely love talking about it. And that's it. From this originally TikTok diagnosed to formally diagnosed autistic person, I hope you have a great day. And I hope you have a great Autism Acceptance / Awareness Month. Please leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and I'll see you next time. See y'all. Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to my Autism Awareness Month, Autism Acceptance Month series. In the last video, I built a facade representative of my autistic masking, and today I'm going to talk about sensitivities, because I have quite a few. So let's get started. Okay, so first I'm just going to build up a little room. And if you're thinking this color looks pretty bright, that's because it is, and that's on purpose. Something that a lot of autistic people, including myself, struggle with is a sensitivity to bright lights and colors. So to kind of represent that, I'm going in with a very bright color. Make it just a little bit longer. And then I'm gonna go in with a contrasting color, because these together just look a little bit like a visual headache. So my goal with this is to kind of show you what my autism looks like to me and maybe help you understand what it can be like to have it, because there are good things, but there are also some struggles. Today we are going to be focusing a little more on the struggles. So here I've got my little room. I can already feel myself reacting to it a little bit. But next I'm going to replace the floor with some orange wool to get another bright color in there, but also this is going to be a little representative of my texture sensitivities. I have a lot of trouble with different kinds of fabric. In fact, when I go shopping, the first thing I look for is not the style of the clothing, it is the texture. I will always feel it first to make sure it's a fabric that I can actually stand having on my skin, because my skin is extremely sensitive both to fabric and to the touch of other people. When I have contact with other people that's more, or really that's less than a firm touch, it feels a little bit like ants are crawling underneath my skin, and I have to get rid of that feeling. I mean, I deal with it, but it's not the best sensation, if you know what I mean. So, we've got 3 bright colors for visual sensitivities. We've got carpet for kind of a texture sensitivity, and I'm actually going to go in and put some campfires under here, because something else that is extremely sensitive with me is my sense of smell. And I figured having these kind of particle effects coming through would be a great way to represent that. And the blue is another bright color, another varying texture. Really, I just want to make sure everything is as representative as it can be. Next, I'm going to go in with food, and I'm going to make a little, almost like kitchen counter here. Do another one in the corner, and lay out some food. Now, here's the thing about me and food. I love cooking. I love baking. I love being in the kitchen. But there are some things that I just can't eat. For example, sun-dried tomatoes. Taste delicious, texture atrocious. The same with spinach and melted cheese. I absolutely love the flavors, but the textures make me feel, honestly, kind of sick. And coconut, that's a taste and texture thing. There are many different things that can go into a food sensitivity. There are lots of things that I wish I could eat, but I just can't. So, kitchen. And let's see, what foods would be best representative of this? So, fish I sometimes have an issue with, so we'll go with that. Soup I have an issue with because there are some varying textures. I'm trying to get better at that, but still an issue. Bread can be a major issue if it's like a whole wheat bread. I really cannot take the texture. Kelp is kind of like seaweed, which I actually love the taste of seaweed, but the texture is another thing. Really, most of my food issues come down to textures. I do love the flavor of a lot of these things, but they're just iffy. I'm going to turn that. That looks weird. Bread and kelp. So, right now we've got visual sensitivities, texture sensitivities, smell sensitivities, food sensitivities. And here we go with another one. Now this kind of leads into something that I would like to talk about at some point, and that is the topic of work, jobs. It is honestly very difficult for autistic people, or for some autistic people, to hold down a job. We are statistically very unemployed or underemployed. And how does that lead into this? Well, the sensitivity that I'm talking about here is light sensitivity. For me, specifically LED sensitivity. I had to leave a job because during my time working there, they replaced all of the lights with LEDs. I was having migraines every day. I couldn't deal with that. And that was just one of a few things, but sometimes we have to prioritize our health over a career, which is horrible, and I wish it wasn't like that, but I couldn't handle having headaches every single day. So, we're going to put some fluorescent lights, some LEDs in this room of... Really, this is just a sensory nightmare for me. But if I want to show you what it's like, this is really the most accurate way I can do this. So, sea lanterns kind of remind me of the type of lighting that was used in that job I had. So, just one off every time. So, there we go. They're not super bright in Minecraft, but trust me, in real life, bad. Okay, one more physical sensitivity and then we're going to get a bit abstract. So I'm just going to place the bell here. I'm not going to have it going off. I'm not going to hook anything up to it to make it make noise because my hearing is very sensitive, and while I do want you guys to understand what it's like having my particular brand of autism, I don't want to do that to myself or to you guys. So that is going to stay quiet. Just know this is representative of my sound sensitivity. So, abstract. Something that is very common amongst autistic people, and something that my therapist, the guy that diagnosed me, really wanted to make a point of was, I need routine. That is non-negotiable. I need a routine. The thing about autism and sensitivities is it all comes back to your nervous system, which is a physical thing. Now, once again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, this is just my understanding of it. What happens when everything is connected like that is everything kind of has an effect on everything else. So this may seem like a non-physical thing, but lack of routine for me, represented by these clocks, actually equals physical ramifications. I get headaches, I get migraines, I even sometimes get physically sick to my stomach. I feel nauseous. It is just not a good time. So, for example, I have to go to bed at the same time every night. Now, that does mean movie nights are a little bit difficult to plan because I go to bed pretty early, but it's just something I need, and my family, who I live with right now, they understand that, and that's... Honestly, I appreciate that so much, because it would be so easy to be like, oh, she's got a bedtime, she's got to go to bed, which is something that I have dealt with in the past, and... Did I just break something? Yes. But really, if you take nothing away from the series, please take this away. It is always better to approach an autistic person with empathy and understanding, and with the assumption that they know more about themselves and what they can handle than you do. So please, just listen to us. Thanks. Okay, back to the abstract sensitivities. As you may be figuring out, many of my sensitivities lead me to having migraines, and this one is no exception. I'm putting these lightning rods up as a representative of my weather sensitivity. If the pressure drops, if it starts to rain, if it's anything less than a full-out thunderstorm, migraine. I get migraines very often. Like, we're talking multiple times a week. It's not fun. But it is my life. So, what we have here is basically me. These are the main sensory things that I struggle with. And looking at it, it's a lot to look at. Like, we've got colors, we've got lights, we've got smells, we've got textures, we've got sound, food, routine, weather. Man, I think I deal with a lot. But, you know, you learn strategies, and you have people to help. So it makes it a little easier to deal with. So one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up for today is the concept of stimulation. It is possible to be overstimulated and understimulated at the same time. Now, I am generally sensory avoidant when it comes to a lot of these things, like the textures, or the food, or the sound. But there are some things that I am sensory seeking in. For example, pressure on my body. I prefer firm hugs to weak. I prefer a firm touch to a soft one. I sleep with a weighted blanket and sometimes extra blankets on top of that because I need that deep pressure. And that's just something else that you have to deal with as an autistic person sometimes, is learning to figure out what senses are overstimulated and what senses are understimulated. Right now, this is definitely overstimulation. But sometimes, for example, if you look out here, or even, let's see, can I find a blank patch of sky? Even kind of like here, this is very understimulating. There's nothing much going on. You need a little bit something extra to kind of fill you up, to sustain you. So when it comes to these sensory things, they are all on kind of a moving scale. And this is just me turning the scale all the way up, just to kind of really drive the point home. So this is actually where I'm going to wrap up for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and please comment down below if you have any questions relating to autism that you think I might be able to answer. I can only speak from my own experience, but that is definitely a valid experience. So, see y'all. Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to my Autism Awareness Month series, where previously we talked about my masking, and then we talked about my sensory troubles. Today we're going to be talking about stimming. So stimming is short for self-stimulatory behavior, and it's just kind of a way to regulate your nervous system. Fun fact, everyone stims, not just autistic people. If you've ever been sitting down and found yourself bouncing your leg up and down, that's a stim. Or if you play with your hair, that's a stim. It's just something to kind of calm you down. However, with autistic people, we tend to do it a little bit more and a little bit different. So, let's get started. So in the previous video, I showed my sensory issues with things that could represent them, like the food and the smoke for the campfires, but for this one, I'm going to be focusing more on what my stims feel like to me. So less a literal representation and more just kind of a vibe. So for me, I tend to have mainly two different kinds of stims, and that is positive and negative. The positive stims are ones that are generally non-harmful to myself. The negative ones are a little bit harmful. And I do try to avoid those when I can, but sometimes it just happens. So we're going to start with the positive side. And for this side, it just feels kind of bright, kind of warm. I like when I do these stims. They're very relaxing, they're very helpful. So I'm going with my favorite color, yellow. And we're just going to build up a little room like we did on that side. And I'm going to make the floor blue. These are very light colors, very bright. And that'll be for the positive stims. Oh, also, quick note. There are some stims that pop up commonly between autistic people, like hand flapping, and then there are others that are maybe not so common. Everyone stims a little bit differently. So just keep in mind, I'm talking about my stims only. So I'm going to go ahead and build up the side for my negative stims. And these are going to be purple. Let me see, is that even? Maybe one more. For this side, I'm going to be using purple and blue because these are colors that I still like, but maybe are a little bit darker in tone. And I wanted to use colors that I still liked because the thing about even the negative stims, they still serve a purpose. They're not really good to use, but they still provide the same sort of relief. So I couldn't quite go all the way with colors that I didn't like. So we're going for tonally something a little darker. And there we go. Positive and negative. And I actually think I'm going to blend these in a little bit. Make it to where there's kind of an overlap. Because they do tend to blend together a little bit. It's not always so black and white, or in this case, yellow and purple. So, like I said, we're going to start with the positive side. Now, let's see. I think I'm going to put in a bed. Because these positive stems can be very comforting. I want to give myself a little bit of a nice bed. And let's see. I think I'll give myself a little nightstand with just a warm lantern and maybe some wool behind the bed, just to kind of continue it up. And I think I want to put in a little fireplace. So let's get some bricks. One of these days I'll remember where everything is in the menu. But unfortunately, it looks like today is not that day. There we go. Let's just do a very simple one. Yeah, I do want that there. There, very simple. So while I'm decorating this, I want to talk about some of my stems, or some of my positive stems. So I mentioned hand flapping before, and that is something that I do. But I have kind of two different ways of hand flapping. One, I use... that's not a great painting to have on the positive side. So one type of hand flapping I have is with two hands, and my palms are facing outwards. And this is something that was actually pointed out by my brother. Whenever I'm flapping like that, that is because I am happy about something. That is a very positive reaction. But I have another type of hand flapping, and that is with one hand with my palm facing in. And that is more on this side. That is when I'm upset. That is when I'm overwhelmed. It's just not quite as positive. But both serve a purpose. Another positive stem I have is nail rubbing. I will take my hands and I'll turn them in towards each other and I'll rub my nails against each other. And just the sensation of that and the sound can be really comforting to me. And it's, as far as I know, something that is completely harmless. So that's going on the positive side. I also tend to hum to myself. Nothing really with a tune, just kind of, just occasionally a little and I can just feel it vibrating in my throat, occasionally in my chest, and it provides some stimulation, it provides some relaxation, and it can just be extremely comforting. Actually, on that note, I want to talk about songs, because sometimes songs can be stems. I don't know if every autistic person has this, but I certainly do. In fact, I have a playlist of songs that I find very stimmy. And for me, a stimmy song tends to be something with kind of a deep beat or even something repetitive, and something that kind of makes my brain feel like it's being massaged. So, a few examples. If anyone has heard Aurora's Cure for Me, that is a very stimmy song. Also, Stray Kids' Silent Cry, specifically the instrumental. It feels so nice to my ears, so nice to my brain, and this one especially, the song Thank You by ATEEZ. There's a part in the chorus where if I sing along in the original register, I can feel it vibrate in my throat and in my chest, and it just hits multiple senses at once, and it is so nice. So, songs can also be a form of stimming. Anyway, back to decorating. So I'm just going to put... I did it again. Bottom slabs. Put an amethyst bud there. And a pot. Now, let's see. I think I'll do bamboo. There we go. And then let's just do a couple of pots here with... Let's go with a cactus. And I want to do a flower. So let's go with an allium. An onion. There we go. So this is the positive, kind of cozy side of stimming. Now onto the negative side. So this one is probably going to be a little more empty, maybe a little more abstract than the positive side. So first off, I'm going to put some dripstone. There we go. Because actually one of my main negative stims is biting. I will bite myself on the hand typically if I'm feeling overwhelmed, which not a good thing to do, but it does provide some release. So I'm trying to get out of that, but it is still very much present. Sometimes in the absence of biting myself, I will pull my hair. Not quite as harmful as biting, but still something that probably should be avoided. So for this side, I'm just kind of building up dark things, creeping things, but things that also aren't too bad on their own. Because like I said, even when they're negative, the stems do still serve a purpose. So going with some harsher lighting here with the redstone torches, just kind of all over the place, not quite so organized. We'll do another dripstone there, maybe there. So yeah, this one not quite as put together as this one, but that's kind of what those stems feel like to me. They are stems that I really only do when I'm feeling chaotic, when I'm feeling a little bit out of control, overwhelmed. So yeah, that's where these are going. So we spent some time today talking about positive stems, spent a little less time talking about the negative stems, because for these, I don't really love lingering on them. They are things that I did want to acknowledge because they do exist. I do struggle with them, but not something I love to have my mind on. But here is my stem picture. This is what it feels like to me. Also, over here, this might look a little cramped, but actually, I don't really get claustrophobic. I find enclosed spaces like this pretty comforting, so this, while it does look a little bit crowded, this is ideal for me. So, one more thing about stems. Stems are kind of outward expressions of inward emotions. So, for example, I said when I'm feeling out of control, I tend to stim more on this side. That's because things like biting and scratching, they provide some control. That is a way to make me feel like I've got a handle on my environment. Over here, when I'm feeling relaxed, happy, my stems also reflect that. But also, stems can sometimes just serve as an energy release. Sometimes you get a lot of energy built up in your body and you need to let it go somehow. So, hand flapping. So, stems can be good, they can be not so good, but they are kind of necessary and they are part of the daily life of an autistic person. So, that's where I'm going to wrap up here. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment. I love talking about this. And leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and see you in the next one. See y'all. Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to my Autism Acceptance Month series, where last week we talked about some of my stims, both positive and negative. And today we're going to talk about something really exciting. It's time to talk about special interests. So, what is a special interest? A special interest is a topic, object, really anything that an autistic person really forms a strong attachment with, a strong interest in. So, I'm going to talk about a couple. So today I'm going to talk about two of my main special interests, and I'm just building up a little room again, like I've been doing, and I haven't been really paying attention I haven't really been too careful about where I'm placing these rooms, because that's kind of what it's like in my brain. They just kind of go wherever they want. It's not really any sort of order, so I figured if I'm trying to show you basically a representation of my brain, these rooms should be a little bit maybe not where they would normally be, or not really any sort of organized or lined up. So, I'm going to talk about two of my main special interests today, and one of them is actually Minecraft, so I'm going in with a green for that. I did think about going in with the lime, but I didn't really want to reuse a color. So, Minecraft has been a special interest for a couple years. I got into it the way I think probably a lot of people have gotten into it, by watching Hermitcraft. And I loved how creative people got with it. I loved the storylines that they came up with. My favorite hermit is False, followed shortly by Zedaf. So if you haven't checked them out, they're really good. So, I started playing Minecraft actually on my little brother's account. Or not really his account, but his game, because I didn't have it for myself. And then I got it on my laptop for my birthday. And I started out playing Bedrock. I would play on our PlayStation 4, and I had so much fun. But y'all, my hands are not meant for controllers. I do so much better with a keyboard and mouse, so I'm very glad to be playing on Java on my laptop today. So this is going to be the Minecraft side. And then, my other special interest that I want to talk about today is actually food history. Now, before I go on, I want to make something clear. Having a special interest in something does not mean that you know everything about the topic. It just means it really kind of fills you with joy, and I want to say it does have the tendency to take over your life a little bit, but it's still good. So, just because you have a special interest in something does not mean you need to be the end-all be-all expert in it. It's just kind of an obsession. So, food history. And this started back in high school when I got a cookbook full of 100-year-old recipes. Actually, more like 200-year-old recipes from Colonial Williamsburg. And I love that cookbook. It is my first historical cookbook that I own, and I now have over 40. So I have been collecting them. I've even spent over $100 on a cookbook, which I'm not super proud of, but, I'm glad to have it. So, I'm going in with this pink, or what is it actually? Yeah, it is pink. Pink terracotta. Because it feels soft, it feels happy, it feels warm, and that's kind of how I feel about cooking. and about learning about the history of food. So, now we've got our two sides. So now it's time to decorate. And I'm going to decorate this kind of like your stereotypical early game starter house with some diamond armor. And Papa Steve head on top. So really, I kind of want this to just be representative of what Minecraft is. Kind of the simple Minecraft. Put an enchanted golden apple in there. And I think I want some paintings. And I think I'll throw in a potion. Maybe one of the splash ones. Yeah, let's do a splash potion of strength. Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. And maybe a big one? Maybe move it over a bit? Perfect. So I'll do that, and then splash potion. Oh, and I forgot one thing. I spam torches pretty much everywhere. Because I do not like mobs. I do not want them around me, so I like to make sure my space is very lit up. Let's go in with a carpet. Let's just do plain white, because in the early game, white sheep are the easiest to come by, so everything ends up being white. So this is the Minecraft side of my little special interest room. Okay, so now to start on the food side, I'm going to make a little kitchen counter, very similar to what I made over there. And put those there as cutting boards. This looks kind of like a sink, so I'll put that in there. Put flower pot for a dish. And do buttons. It's kind of drawers. And then up here, I'm gonna do some bookshelves because it really is the collecting of historical cookbooks that is really a lot of the appeal for me. So, one of the things that I do, or one of the ways I like to engage in my special interest, is through cooking some of the recipes in these books. And my favorite is apple pie, because apple pie is such a standard recipe that you can really see how cooking has evolved over the years based on how people make their apple pies. So I really like kind of exploring with those. Okay, let me get maybe some end rods in here. Ah, okay. Let me move all of this up one. Get all these books. And now I can do the end rods. I'll just have them kind of through like that. Okay. So here is my special interest room. Okay, so one more thing I want to talk about with special interests before I wrap up for today is the fact that it's not always all fun all the time. These can get pretty all-encompassing. I have definitely sacrificed some of my mental and physical health because I was engaging in my special interest too much. They can be very helpful, and they are very much needed to keep up the mental health of an autistic person, but it's not just, oh, I like this thing a lot and I play Minecraft a lot or I cook a lot. I have spent days pretty much not doing anything else. And that is not healthy. It's all about moderation. And when it comes to special interests, it's really, really hard to get that moderation. It's so much more than just, oh, I like this thing, or oh, I find this thing interesting. It can be incredibly personal and an incredibly deep relationship with this thing. So just remember that with a lot of these things, a lot of these positive things, there is usually a negative side. But the same with the negative things, there's usually a positive. Autism is kind of a disability of extremes. It's not just, oh, you do this so you're autistic, or oh, you do that so you're not autistic. It's very much, well, how much do you do this? How little do you do this? Like, take eye contact. A lot of autistic people struggle with eye contact, but it's not just, oh, you don't make eye contact, so you're autistic. It can also be, oh, you make too much eye contact. It's all a scale. And it's the same with special interests. I love these things, but I have to be very careful with them. So, that's where I'm going to wrap up for today. Leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, comment down below any questions you think I might be able to answer. See y'all! Hey y'all! My name is Babbles, and welcome to the last video in my Autism Acceptance Month series, where I'm not actually going to be doing a lot of building today. I'm just going to be going through some points that I think I may have missed, and maybe talking about what I hope for the future when it comes to autism and its acceptance. So, let's get started. So in the first video, I built this facade to kind of represent my masking and what I would do to hide my autism. And this is something that I'm still working on getting rid of, and honestly something that I'm not quite so good at anymore, which has its ups and downs, but you know, that's part of life. But one of the reasons why I say it's kind of breaking down is it's becoming a little bit more obvious to people around me that there is something different about me. For example, I am not as good at making eye contact as I used to be. I'm pretty good at faking it. I'll often look at the space in between people's eyebrows or just underneath the eyebrow, and I can kind of get away with it, but it's still really difficult. Also, I want to mention social cues real quick. It's common for autistic people to miss social cues, and for me, I miss them, but it's almost like I know that there's a social cue happening, I just have no idea what it is. Like when I'm talking to someone, I know when something is going on, but I cannot for the life of me figure out what it is. So, mask is breaking down. I wish that part of it wasn't. I then talked about some of my sensory sensitivities, and these are things that I still struggle with quite frequently. In fact, I just started a new job, so my routine has been all over the place, and that's been very stressful. But I also like my new job, so it's been very helpful. And then over here, I have my stims, my more positive, cozy stims, and my more negative, maybe a little more harmful stims. But good news, I am working on those, and I think I maybe, hopefully, won't have to worry about biting myself so much anymore, so that's some pretty good news. And then I talked about my special interests, which include Minecraft and food. And good news, my new job has to do with food, so that is a definite plus. So what do I hope for the future when it comes to autism? Well, for one, I hope that autistic people can be unapologetically ourselves. I hope that there is support available, because right now that support can be a little bit lacking. I hope that everyone who is autistic can know that they're autistic. I often hear about parents getting their kids diagnosed but not telling them that they've been diagnosed, and I just want to share a little bit of my perspective on that. my perspective is the reason given for that is often parents don't want their kids to grow up with a label, which, fair, I get that. However, coming from experience, we don't have the luxury of growing up without a label. But the labels that I grew up with were different, weird, odd, wrong. Labels that you definitely don't want your kid to grow up with. Having that label of autism would have helped a lot when I was younger. However, I recognize that particularly right now, and particularly in the US, we are approaching a lot of uncertainty when it comes to autism and how autistic people will be treated. So, I don't really want to give a whole lot of advice because I'm not an expert, but my other perspective that I want to offer is self-diagnosis is valid. If you do the research yourself and you think you might be autistic and you find things that help you in your daily life, that's great. That can be enough. Because right now I can understand if maybe you're a little hesitant about pursuing a formal diagnosis, and even if you're not hesitant, it can sometimes be very difficult to even get one. Doctors are expensive. Sometimes the doctor you need isn't even available in your area. Whatever the reason is, I'm going to be right here, still autistic, still talking about it. So, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and I'll see y'all in the next video.